The music stopped first. Not slowly. Not naturally. It cut off mid-song like someone unplugged the room itself. 1 second my mother was laughing near the kitchen island, champagne glass lifted high while telling her Monaco story for the 4th time. And the next second, 3 uniformed officers walked through our front door. No knocking, no hesitation, just quiet authority filling a house that smelled like expensive candles and catered shrimp. Someone whispered, "Is this part of the party?" My father turned, still smiling. That smile lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then he saw me standing behind the officers. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was holding a small black folder against my chest. The same folder I'd been building for 30 days. Officer Ramirez spoke calmly. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett." My mother laughed nervously. "Oh my God, is this a joke?" No one laughed with her. The officer continued. "We have a warrant regarding a report of child abandonment." The room shifted. Glasses lowered. Phones came out. Guests stepped backward like emotional distance could protect them. My father looked at me, not confused, not worried. He looked betrayed. And that was the moment I understood something very clearly. They still believed I was the powerless 11-year-old they left behind. I didn't say anything. I just handed the officer the folder, and everything changed. Here's the strange part. The police didn't arrive because of one bad decision. They arrived because of 30 quiet days no one knew existed. My parents had posted daily vacation photos from Europe. Perfect smiles, perfect sunsets, perfect family image. But during those same 30 days, someone had been calling grocery stores asking about a child buying food alone. A school attendance officer had filed an unusual note. A neighbor reported lights on at 2 a.m. every night, and hidden inside that black folder were recordings, videos, receipts, dates, times, things an 11-year-old was never supposed to understand. So the real question wasn't, why were the police there? The real question was, why had I been preparing for them before my parents even came home? Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from tonight? I always wonder who ends up hearing stories like this, because when I tell it now, people say they recognize pieces of their own childhood in it. If you've ever felt like the responsible one in a situation where you shouldn't have had to be, you'll understand this story. If you agree, please like and subscribe the channel. All right, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Sydney Bennett. I'm 31 now. I live in Connecticut, about 40 minutes outside Hartford, and I work in compliance auditing, which, ironically, makes perfect sense once you hear what happened. People assume my childhood was chaotic. It wasn't. That's what made everything so confusing. From the outside, my family looked stable. Upper-middle-class neighborhood, 2-story colonial house. My dad worked in finance. My mom ran a lifestyle blog before influencers were really a thing. We hosted dinners, holiday parties, neighborhood wine nights. My parents were the couple everyone admired. My mother liked saying, "We believe in independence. Kids need resilience." At 11, I believed that meant trust. Looking back, it meant something else. I remember the evening they told me about Europe. We were eating takeout Thai food at the kitchen counter. My mom barely looked up from her phone. "So, exciting news," she said. "Your father earned a travel incentive." Dad nodded casually. 30 days, France, Italy, Greece, Monaco. I blinked. "Oh, cool." Then I waited for the part where they explained where I'd be staying. Grandma's house, an aunt, a family friend. Instead, my mom slid a $20 bill across the counter. "We'll FaceTime." I stared at the bill. "Wait, I'm staying here?" Dad smiled like I'd asked something silly. "You're mature for your age, Sid." My stomach felt strange. "I still have school." "You'll manage," Mom said. "There's food in the pantry." She handed me a credit card. "Emergency use." I turned it over. No activation sticker removed. No explanation, just confidence. At 11 years old, I didn't know the word neglect. I only knew something felt unfinished. That night, lying in bed, I thought, adults don't make mistakes like this, so I convinced myself it was normal. The first problem happened on day 3. The refrigerator was empty, not low, empty. I stood there staring at shelves that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. I called my mom, FaceTime connected, Behind her, blue ocean, white umbrellas, laughter. "Hi, honey," she said. "We're about to go sailing. I think we're out of food." She tilted her head. "There's pasta. No sauce. Well, improvise." Dad leaned into frame, holding a drink. "Builds character, kiddo." They laughed. I smiled automatically. "Okay." Call ended. The house felt quieter than usual. I remember opening the pantry again, even though I knew nothing new would appear. Ramen packets, crackers, peanut butter. I counted everything. That was the first night I started writing things down, not because I was planning anything, because tracking things made me feel less alone. On day 5, Mrs. Delgado next door saw me dragging trash bins alone. She walked over slowly. "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" "They're traveling." "For how long?" "A month." She froze slightly. "A month," I nodded. "They left food and stuff." She studied my face. "You eating okay?" I hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. "I'm fine." She crouched closer. "If you need anything, you knock, all right?" I nodded again. But inside I thought, why does this feel like a secret? Days blurred into routines no 11-year-old should have. Wake up alone. Pack my own lunch from whatever existed. Walk to school. Pretend everything was normal. I learned quickly which cafeteria items were free. I learned which teachers noticed things. And I learned how adults react when a child says, "I'm okay." They want to believe it. My teacher, Miss Harper, stopped me after class. "Sydney, can you stay a minute?" My heart started racing. "You've seemed tired lately." "I'm fine." "Are your parents working late?" "They're in Europe." She paused. "Who's home with you?" "Myself." Silence stretched. She chose her next words carefully. "And how long has that been?" 5 days. Her expression changed, not panic, just calculation. "You know you can talk to me if you need help." I nodded quickly. "I'm good." I left before she could ask more. But that night I realized something. Adults were starting to notice inconsistencies. And instead of relief, I felt fear. Because if I admitted something was wrong, it meant my parents had done something wrong. And at 11, protecting them felt automatic. I didn't feel abandoned yet. I felt responsible. Responsible for keeping everything functioning until they came back. Responsible for proving I was mature enough. Responsible for not embarrassing my family. That belief lasted until day 9. Day 9 was when I tried using the credit card. The grocery cashier swiped it twice. Declined. She smiled politely. "Another form of payment?" I handed her my last $12. Walking home with one grocery bag, something finally shifted inside me. I called the number on the back of the card. Automated voice. "Card inactive." Inactive. Not maxed out, not restricted, never activated. I sat on the curb outside my own house holding groceries and realized they didn't forget. They never planned for me to use it. That night, I turned my school iPad camera on and recorded myself talking. I didn't know why. I just said, "Today is day 9. The card doesn't work." And without realizing it, I started documenting evidence. Later that evening, they called from Santorini. Mom beamed. "You would love it here." "The card doesn't work," she frowned. "Oh, weird." Dad waved dismissively. "We'll fix it later." "I don't have money." "You're exaggerating," he said calmly. "There's food." I hesitated. "There isn't." Mom sighed slightly. "Sydney, we can't troubleshoot logistics every day. We trusted you." Trusted. The word landed heavy. After the call ended, I whispered to the camera. "They think I'm lying." And that was the moment my mindset changed. I stopped trying to survive. I started trying to prove reality. I recorded everything. Empty fridge videos, receipts, calendar dates, messages left unanswered. I even filmed myself locking doors at night, because fear arrived quietly. Not dramatic fear, just awareness that if something happened, no adult knew I was alone. Mrs. Delgado began leaving food bags on the porch. I documented those too, not out of resentment, out of clarity. Something inside me understood. Adults believe documentation more than children. Day 15. I was called to the counselor's office. Mr. Jenkins folded his hands. "We just want to check in." "I'm okay." "Who's supervising you at home?" "My parents call every day." "That's not what I asked." Silence. My hands felt cold. "I can take care of myself." He studied me carefully. "You shouldn't have to." Those words echoed long after I left. You shouldn't have to. That was the first time I considered the possibility that what was happening wasn't normal independence. It was absence. Confusion turned into awareness. Awareness turned into quiet anger. Not explosive anger, measured anger. The kind that organizes. I created labeled folders on the iPad. Food calls, school safety. I didn't know what I would do with them. I only knew I needed truth preserved. On day 28, my parents texted, "We land Saturday, welcome home party Sunday, invite neighbors." I stared at the message for a long time. Welcome home party, for leaving me alone. I typed back, "Okay." But inside, a new thought formed. Everyone should know what really happened. I didn't plan revenge. I planned accuracy. Dialogue scene, police non-emergency call 2 nights before they returned. I called the non-emergency police line. My voice shook slightly. "Hi, I'm not sure if this is the right place." The dispatcher spoke gently. "What's going on?" "My parents left the country and I've been alone for almost a month." Pause. "How old are you?" 11. Her tone changed instantly. "Are you safe right now?" "Yes." "Stay on the line." That call began the process I didn't fully understand. Reports, follow-ups. A welfare check scheduled, not immediately, but timed. Timed for when my parents returned. Timed for witnesses. Timed for truth. And that brings us back to the party. Music stopped. Guests staring. My parents frozen between confusion and disbelief. Officer Ramirez opened the folder I handed him. He flipped through page after page. Videos, dates, notes written in a child's handwriting. My mother whispered, "Sydney, what did you do?" I finally spoke, calm, steady. "I told the truth." The officer looked up at them and said, "We need to discuss the last 30 days. And that was the moment my father realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an investigation, and the night was only beginning. No one left. That's the part people never expect. You'd think guests would quietly grab coats and disappear. They didn't. They hovered. Because social curiosity is stronger than politeness. The officers stood near the dining room while soft jazz still played from ceiling speakers, absurdly calm music under a collapsing reality. My mother's smile trembled but stayed in place. "This is clearly some misunderstanding," she said lightly, looking around for agreement. "Sydney's dramatic sometimes." I remember noticing how she said it, not worried, not concerned. She framed me as unreliable before anyone asked a question. Officer Ramirez didn't react. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "we're going to ask everyone not directly involved to step into the living room." My father finally spoke. His voice dropped low. "Sydney, outside now." I didn't move, and that more than the police unsettled him, because I had always obeyed, always. Dad stepped closer. "What is this about?" I answered quietly. "You left me alone." His jaw tightened. "We trusted you." "No," I said, "you left." Mom laughed nervously toward the guests. "She's exaggerating." She had everything she needed. Officer Ramirez opened the folder. He lifted the first printed still image, an empty refrigerator, dated, time-stamped. He set it on the counter, then another. Grocery receipt, $6.42. Another video transcript, my daily recordings. The room went silent in layers. You could almost hear people recalculating their opinions. A neighbor whispered behind me, "Oh my God, she really was alone." Someone else said, "I thought they hired a sitter." Mrs. Delgado crossed her arms slowly. "I asked," she said. "She told me they were gone a month." My mother turned sharply. "Why would you interfere?" Mrs. Delgado didn't back down. "Because she's 11. That was the first crack in my parents' social armor, and I watched it happen in real time. Their reputation, carefully built for years, started slipping, not because of accusations, but because witnesses connected memories. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt strangely calm, like watching weather arrive that had already been predicted. I remember thinking, this isn't revenge, this is correction. Officer Ramirez asked my parents to sit, not requested, directed. Dad resisted. "This is ridiculous, she's safe." "Clearly," the officer nodded slightly. "That's something we'll determine." Another officer turned to me gently. "Sydney, would you step into the hallway with Officer Lee?" I followed her. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and perfume, remnants of the party trying to pretend nothing serious was happening. Officer Lee knelt slightly to my level. "You did the right thing calling," she said softly. My throat tightened. "Am I in trouble?" "No," she paused. "You shouldn't have been alone that long." Those words hit differently now than when the counselor said them, because this time authority confirmed it. I wasn't overreacting. From the kitchen, voices rose. "Dad, this is blown out of proportion." "Officer Ramirez, how long were you out of the country?" "Mom, 30 days, officer, and no adult supervision. We checked in daily. Was anyone physically responsible for the child?" Silence. That silence echoed louder than yelling. Then something unexpected happened. Officer Ramirez flipped deeper into the folder. He stopped, brows furrowed. "What's this section?" I stepped forward. "That's money stuff." Dad immediately stiffened. "What money stuff?" I hadn't planned to include it, but during those 30 days alone, boredom had turned into curiosity. I had started opening old mail stacked in the office, bank statements, education savings notices, letters addressed to my parents referencing accounts under my name. I didn't understand them fully then. I only knew they felt important. Officer Ramirez read aloud. "Minor Education Trust, withdrawals recorded annually." He looked up. "Can you explain these?" My mother answered quickly. "That's family financial management." Dad added sharply, "This is none of your concern." The officer closed the folder gently. "When financial activity intersects with potential neglect, it becomes relevant." I remember watching my father's confidence shift for the first time. Not anger, calculation. He realized this wasn't just about leaving me alone. The situation was widening. I had reported abandonment, but now adults were asking questions I didn't even know existed. Why were there withdrawals? Why were accounts under my name? That night planted a seed that wouldn't fully grow for years. 2 CPS workers arrived 30 minutes later. Clipboards, calm expressions, professional distance. Guests pretended to sip drinks while openly listening. The party had transformed into a courtroom without walls. One worker introduced herself. "We need to assess Sydney's immediate safety." My mother's voice cracked. "This is humiliating." The worker replied gently. "Our priority is the child. Not family, not reputation. The child." I noticed my father stop making eye contact with guests. He understood optics now mattered. CPS worker. "Sydney, where did you sleep each night?" "My room." "Did anyone check on you physically?" "No." "What did you eat?" "Ramen, sometimes food from Mrs. Delgado." The worker wrote everything down. Mom interrupted. "She never complained," I answered quietly. "You told me to build character." The words landed heavier than I expected. Several guests looked away, because they remembered hearing my mother say that phrase before. Suddenly it sounded different. People began recalling past moments. "Oh, remember when Sydney stayed home alone during the storm? And that weekend they went skiing." Patterns emerged publicly. What once looked like independence now looked like absence. And reputations rarely survive pattern recognition. I didn't hate my parents. That's important. I felt distance forming, like watching strangers defend choices I couldn't understand anymore. I realized something quietly. They weren't shocked by what they did. They were shocked I documented it. CPS decided I would temporarily stay with my Aunt Melissa. Immediate arrangement, non-negotiable. Mom protested. "She belongs at home," the worker answered calmly. "For tonight, this is precautionary." Dad turned to me sharply. "You've embarrassed this family." I met his eyes. I was scared. He didn't respond. That silence hurt more than anger. Aunt Melissa arrived quickly. She hugged me tight. "I didn't know," she whispered. I believed her. As we walked toward her car, my mother called after me. "Sydney, we'll talk about this later." I paused. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I already tried talking. I got in the car. And as we drove away, I watched through the window. Police lights reflecting off champagne glasses. Guests whispering. My parents standing in the doorway of their perfect home, looking suddenly exposed. That night should have been the ending. Authorities intervened. Adults apologized publicly weeks later. Life resumed outwardly normal, but something had changed inside me. I had learned 3 things. Documentation protects truth. Adults can rewrite reality unless evidence exists. Money conversations around me were strangely secretive. I didn't know yet that those lessons would matter far more at age 26 than at 11. Because 5 years later, I would discover something worse than abandonment. Something hidden across 12 years. Something worth $13,850. And when that discovery came, I was no longer a scared child. I was prepared. 5 years passed. I sat at my college financial aid office reviewing tuition paperwork. The advisor frowned at her screen. "Sydney, your education trust shows consistent withdrawals since you were 9. My stomach dropped. "That's impossible." She turned the monitor toward me. Dates, amounts, signatures authorized by my parents. Money my grandmother left specifically for me, already gone. In that moment, the Europe trip stopped being the worst thing they'd done. It was only the first clue. And I realized the folder I built at 11 had never really closed. It was just the beginning of an investigation into my own family. The financial aid office smelled like printer toner and old carpet. Nothing dramatic, just fluorescent lighting and a woman named Karen adjusting her glasses while staring at my account screen longer than felt comfortable. She didn't look alarmed. She looked confused. That was worse. "Sydney," she said slowly, "are you aware funds have been withdrawn from your education trust multiple times?" I laughed lightly. "Probably tuition payments from my parents." She didn't laugh back. She rotated the monitor toward me. Lines of transactions filled the screen, dates stretching back years, withdrawals every few months, some small, some large, authorized signatures attached. My parents' names. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. That old calm returned, the same calm from the night of the party, because something inside me recognized the pattern. When things feel wrong, start documenting. I leaned closer. "How much total?" Karen clicked twice. Her voice softened. $13,850. I blinked. That can't be right. These funds were designated by a grandparent trust, restricted for education expenses. I swallowed. "My grandmother set that up." Karen nodded gently. "Then you may want to discuss this with whoever had custodial control." Custodial control, such polite wording, for something that suddenly felt like theft. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. Instead, memories began rearranging themselves. The Europe trip, the inactive credit card, the phrase builds character. I realized something uncomfortable. My parents had always controlled resources. Food, money, information. And I had mistaken control for parenting. I went home that evening, still living with my parents during my first college semester to save money. The house looked identical to when I was 11. Same furniture. Same framed vacation photos. Same performance of normalcy. Mom was at the kitchen island scrolling her phone. "Hey, sweetheart," she said casually. "How was campus?" I set my backpack down. "It was good." I watched her carefully. Measured tone, no accusation yet, just observation. I poured water slowly. "Quick question, do you know anything about Grandma's education trust?" She didn't look up immediately, just half a second too late. "Oh, that. Your father manages those things." My internal alarm turned on. "Were withdrawals made?" She smiled. "Probably administrative transfers." Administrative, a vague word, a protective word. Dad entered the room, perfect timing, like always. "Dad, what's this about?" Me, "I saw withdrawals from my education fund." He shrugged. "We handled expenses over the years." "What expenses?" "You lived here, didn't you?" The air shifted. Something heavy settled between us. I realized they weren't denying it. They were justifying it. I returned to my room and opened my laptop. For the first time, I searched Connecticut custodial account law, not emotionally, clinically, and that's when the second shock arrived. Under Connecticut UTMA law, funds legally belong to the child. Parents act only as temporary custodians. Money must be used solely for the minor's benefit, not normal parental expenses. My stomach dropped. Groceries, mortgage, vacations, those weren't allowed uses, which meant this wasn't gray area parenting. It might be financial misconduct. I didn't confront them again that night, because at 11, confrontation got me dismissed. At 21, I chose silence instead. Silence gives information. I scheduled a meeting with the bank listed on the trust. The branch manager, Mr. Caldwell, greeted me politely. "Hi, Sydney, how can I help? I need access details for a custodial account under my name." He typed, brows lifting slightly. "Yes, this account converts fully to you at age 21. I turned 21 last week." He nodded. "Then you now have full legal authority." The words landed like gravity shifting. Full legal authority. Me. "Can withdrawals still be made without me?" Mr. Caldwell. "Not once identity transfer completes." I hesitated. "Has anyone attempted access recently?" He checked again. "Yes, there was an inquiry logged this morning." My stomach tightened. "This morning?" "Yes, remote access attempt." I knew instantly who, my father. Trying to move money before I understood ownership. The same instinct as years ago. Control first. Explain later. Suddenly the memory hit me, 9:02 p.m. security alert. The moment he tried accessing my account while I was still in the house. History wasn't repeating. It was revealing a pattern decades long. They acted quickly whenever control was threatened, which meant I needed to act faster. Mr. Caldwell explained options calmly. Account conversion, password resets, identity verification, asset protection notices. I listened carefully, asked precise questions, took notes. At the end, I said, "I want to transfer all remaining funds into a new account solely under my control." He nodded. "That's your legal right." No drama, no revenge speech, just paperwork, signatures, security codes. 5 weeks before my parents realized anything had changed, the money was already gone, legally moved, protected, locked. Walking out of the bank, I didn't feel victorious. I felt older, like something finally balanced. At 11, I learned evidence protects truth. At 21, I learned law protects independence. The confrontation happened accidentally. Or maybe inevitably. I was downstairs doing homework when Dad's voice echoed from his office. "Sydney." Sharp. Controlled. Dangerously calm. I walked in. His laptop screen faced me. Bank login page. Access denied message. "Why can't I access your account?" "Me." "Because it's mine." Mom appeared behind him instantly. "What did you do?" "I transferred it." Dad's voice hardened. "You had no authority." I met his eyes. "Yes, I did." Silence stretched. Then anger replaced control. "That money paid for your upbringing." I answered evenly. "It was Grandma's education trust." Mom scoffed. "Family resources are shared." Something inside me finally clicked. They genuinely believed entitlement equaled permission. Dad slammed the desk. "You think you can just cut us out?" I spoke calmly. "I didn't cut you out. I secured my assets." The words sounded unfamiliar coming from me. Adult. Legal. Unemotional. His anger shifted into something worse. Fear. Dad stood. "You live under this roof." I nodded. "You told me if I wanted independence, I should work for myself." Mom crossed her arms. "Yes, and so I am." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. He realized leverage was disappearing. "Dad, if you're going to behave like this, maybe you should move out." "Me." "Okay." Mom blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'll move out." They expected resistance. Tears. Negotiation. Instead, I agreed instantly. And that unsettled them more than rebellion ever could. I packed that night. Not dramatically. Just quietly placing clothes into boxes. Every sound of tape sealing cardboard felt like closing chapters. Mom stood in my doorway. "You're overreacting." I folded a sweater slowly. I learned to prepare early. She didn't understand the reference. But I did. At midnight, I carried my last box to my car. Dad watched from the porch. He didn't stop me. Didn't apologize. Didn't ask me to stay. He only said, "You'll regret turning against family." I paused. Not angry. Just honest. I didn't turn against family. I looked at the house. I stopped letting family turn against me. I drove away. And for the first time since I was 11, I felt safe. Life stabilized. Apartment. 2 jobs. College finished. Distance created peace. 5 quiet years passed. No major fights. Minimal contact. Until one afternoon. My phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard. "Sydney, we need help." I leaned back slowly. "What kind of help?" A long pause. Then she said, "We're losing the house." And suddenly, the people who once controlled everything were asking the daughter they abandoned to save them. I sat in my apartment office staring at spreadsheets from work, sunlight hitting the same kind of quiet independence I'd built piece by piece. 5 years. 5 peaceful years. We spoke on holidays. Short conversations. Careful topics. No money discussions.
Silence stretched long enough that I checked if the call dropped. Then she said, "We're losing the house." I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. What I felt first was recognition. Patterns rarely disappear. They just wait for circumstances to change. And suddenly I wondered, where did all the money go? Because my parents had always appeared financially stable. Luxury travel, events, renovations. Image mattered deeply to them. So collapse didn't happen overnight. It meant something had been wrong for a long time. Mom continued carefully. "Your father had some investment setbacks." I leaned back. "How serious?" "We're behind on mortgage payments." "How far behind?" Another pause. 6 months. My chest tightened slightly. 6 months wasn't sudden hardship. It was denial stretched too long. "And you're calling me because—" Her voice softened. "You've done well for yourself. We thought maybe you could help us bridge things until we recover." Bridge things. The same language they used years ago when my grandmother's money disappeared. In that moment, something clicked. Not emotionally. Logically. They weren't calling their successful friends. Not extended family. Not financial advisors. They called me, the daughter whose education fund they had quietly drained. I asked one question. "Do you want a loan or forgiveness?" She hesitated. "Well, family helps family." There it was. The phrase returned. Circular. Familiar. Predictable. I agreed to meet them. Not because I planned to rescue them, but because unfinished stories rarely stay buried forever. They invited me to dinner at the house. The same house. Walking up the driveway 5 years later felt surreal. The exterior looked smaller. Paint slightly faded. Landscaping neglected. Image maintenance had slipped. Inside, the atmosphere felt heavier. Quieter. Reality finally visible beneath presentation. Mom hugged me tightly. "We miss you." "I'm glad you're okay," I said. Dad entered more cautiously. Older. Tired. Less certain. He gestured toward the table. "Let's sit." Dinner felt strangely formal. Plates carefully arranged. An attempt at normalcy. Finally, Dad spoke. "We made mistakes." The admission surprised me. But experience taught me to wait. Mistakes often precede requests. Dad continued. The market turned. Some investments failed. Mom added quickly. "We just need temporary support." I nodded slowly. "How much?" Dad exhaled. 30,000. I almost smiled, because the number sounded familiar. Not identical, but close enough to echo history. Old guilt tried to surface. But another voice, the calm adult voice I'd built, asked, "Why me?" So I asked directly, "Before we talk about money, I want to understand something." They stiffened slightly. I continued, What happened to Grandma's trust? Silence flooded the room instantly. Mom looked at Dad. Dad avoided my eyes. That told me everything before words arrived. Finally, he said, "We used it when things were tight." When? Over the years. For what? He hesitated. House expenses. Travel. Bills. I nodded slowly. So not for my education. Mom spoke defensively. You benefited from living here. I stayed calm. Parents are legally required to support their children. They didn't respond. So I placed a folder on the table. A new folder. Adult version. Inside. Bank statements. Withdrawal timelines. Connecticut UTMA statutes highlighted. Their faces changed as they realized something important. I hadn't come emotionally. I came prepared.
Me?
I calculated every withdrawal.
Dad.
You're making this legal.
Me?
It already was legal.
Mom.
Why bring this up now? I met her gaze calmly. Because you're asking me to replace money that was already mine. Silence expanded again. The power dynamic shifted quietly, but completely. I wasn't angry. That confused them. They expected resentment or emotional explosion. Instead, I spoke like someone reviewing facts. You withdrew $13,850 intended for my education. Dad rubbed his temples. We always planned to make it right. When? No answer. I continued gently. When I was 11, you said hardship builds character. Mom's eyes watered slightly. I wasn't accusing. I was connecting timelines. You left me alone for 30 days while using money meant to secure my future. The words hung in the air. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. Then I told them something unexpected. I didn't come alone tonight. Dad frowned. What do you mean? The doorbell rang. Mom stood slowly. When she opened the door, 3 familiar faces entered. Aunt Melissa, Mrs. Delgado, and my cousin Daniel, now a real estate attorney. Confusion spread across their faces. I remained seated.
Calm.
Controlled. This conversation affects more than just us, I said. Mrs. Delgado spoke softly. I always wondered what really happened back then. Aunt Melissa added gently. We never discussed it openly. Daniel set his briefcase down. Sydney asked me to review financial history. Dad stood abruptly. This is inappropriate, I answered quietly.
No.
This is transparent. Daniel opened documents. Based on records, custodial funds appear to have been misused. No shouting. No accusations. Just professional language dismantling years of denial. Guests weren't strangers this time. They were witnesses to truth. And suddenly my parents weren't hosting a narrative anymore. They were participating in reality. I slid one final paper across the table. A repayment summary. Not demanded. Offered. I'm not here to punish you, I said. I'm here to close the account emotionally and financially. Dad stared at it. You're billing us?
No.
I shook my head. I'm giving you clarity. 3 options listed. Acknowledge funds as early inheritance. Establish structured repayment. Accept no financial help moving forward. Mom whispered, You won't save the house? I answered honestly. I already saved myself. The room went silent. Not hostile, just honest. And in that silence, everyone understood the reversal. The child once abandoned had become the only emotionally stable adult present. They didn't sign anything that night. No dramatic resolution. Just quiet consequences. Over the following months, they sold the house. Downsized. Lifestyle changed. Conversations between us became slower, more real. For the first time, my parents stopped performing success. And strangely, that made limited reconciliation possible. Not perfect. Not healed overnight. But honest. I'm 31 now. I own a small home. I work in compliance, helping organizations prevent exactly the kind of boundary violations that shaped my life. My parents live nearby in a modest condo. We meet for coffee sometimes. No pretending. No financial entanglement. Just adults learning new roles. Peace didn't come from revenge. It came from clarity. People often ask if I forgave them. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was distance plus understanding. I realized something important. The opposite of neglect isn't punishment. It's self-protection. At 11, I survived by documenting truth. At 21, I survived by protecting my future. At 31, I survived by choosing peace over proving anything. The police at that party didn't destroy my family. They ended an illusion. And sometimes endings are the only way real relationships begin. I want to ask you something honestly. If you discovered your own parents had taken money meant for your future, and years later, they asked you for help, what would you do? Would you help them anyway? Would you demand repayment? Or would you walk away completely? Tell me in the comments. Who was really wrong here? Can family rebuild trust after something like this? And would you have made the same choice I did? I read every story you share, because chances are, someone listening tonight understands this feeling more than they've ever said out loud. Lastly, if you have not yet, please subscribe the channel. It helps reach more people who can relate to the story. Thanks for watching, folks.